And we're on.
Late night from Willowdale. We haven't done one in a number of weeks, so we thought we'd just do one. We'll try to keep it within 10 minutes. Bunch of issues to talk about. But let's talk first about what's going on in this country, what's going on in Canada. Trudeau just named a new cabinet the other day. I think he's gotten off onto the wrong foot. Uh, he has an enlarged cabinet that was unnecessary. He's got less members of parliament, but he has an enlarged cabinet. I think that was unnecessary. He created some cabinet ministries that are just silly. And the classic one was the ministry. He has a minister now for middle class prosperity. A minister. He has a cabinet post for middle class prosperity. So there's a minister of middle class prosperity. It's Orwellian. It's silly. Uh, we don't need that stuff. Incorporate that sort of stuff into another, like into the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Economic Development or something, into another ministry dealing with the economy of the country. We don't need another ministry, and we don't need this constant barrage of the middle class, the middle class. It's all about helping the middle class and helping people wanting to get into the middle class. I mean, that's so pathetic. And hearing Trudeau go on and on about that is enough to make you nauseous. I know it's a big deal in other countries too. In the U.S., it's always about the middle class. Well, first of all, there should be, if they're going to be a ministry about anything, there should be a ministry of poverty, a ministry for lower income people. Really, those are the people that really need help. People who live paycheck to paycheck, people who don't have jobs, people who are on
Disability
assistance.
or
Those are the people that need help. Not yes, the middle class needs help, but go should really helping the people that really need it and are living in dire straits, and there are millions of them in Canada. So really, and even that I would say incorporate it into a financial ministry. You don't need to create new ministries for this stuff. This is just symbolic, and it's silly, and it's a waste of taxpayers' dollars. Because as you know, cabinet minister gets a car, gets an inflated salary, gets a has a staff. It's crazy, and he's just doing that to thinking to shore up his minority government, and I think it's outrageous. Uh, if anything, like I said, we need a minister to deal with poverty, and we need a minister to deal with low income people and people living on the edge. So we don't need a minister for middle class prosperity. We don't need any of these symbolic, useless ministries. It's a waste of money. Incorporate these issues into other economic ministries or portfolios. Okay, so Trudeau's in my way starting off on the wrong foot. It was interesting that he shifted Chrystia Freeland into intergovernmental affairs. Obviously, tensions between the provinces is real and important, but I think she was shifted out of the foreign affairs ministry because she was getting too big for her britches, as they say. She was becoming a star on the international stage, and Trudeau could only have one star on the international stage, and that's him, the big liberal, prophet, Justin Trudeau, the big liberal reformer, Justin Trudeau. And there could only be one star on the international stage from Canada, and that's Justin Trudeau. So he thought, well, I got to get rid of a competitor. So he shifted Chrystia Freeland to intergovernmental affairs, and which he could be useful at. Like I said, there's lots of tensions between the provinces, but I thought that was a political thing, and I think a lot of people saw it that way. And um, yeah, it's typical arrogance of Justin Bieber Trudeau. Um, okay, so yeah, and there are tensions, and they are real. And Alberta, and Saskatchewan have a right to be upset the fact that they can't get their oil to market, and I think they Trudeau's got to get that Trans Mountain pipeline built. He's got to use every tool in the toolbox to get it built, and so those tensions are real, and this whole idea of a Western separation, I think, is silly, and it's playing to a narrow base, and I think it's crazy. But the issues are real about getting oil to market, helping the oil industry in Alberta, Saskatchewan. They're real issues, and Trudeau's got to get that Trans Mountain pipeline built, and he has the tools in his federal toolbox to do it. And in terms of the Quebec, yeah, that's a whole different can of worms. Well, the arrogance of Quebec is just, it's all about Quebec, And when they say when Blanchet said we don't want pipelines crossing Quebec, we'll never have pipelines crossing Quebec. The hypocrisy there is incredible because Quebecers drive cars, they fly on airplanes, they need oil. And, they destroyed the James Bay lowlands to create all these hydroelectricity dams. Hydroelectricity isn't clean either. So they like I said, in the 1970s, they destroyed massive parts of central Quebec to build these dams. So they don't have clean energy either. So the hypocrisy from Quebec is just mind-blowing. Okay, so another Canadian issue, now a couple of weeks old, and kind of dying, I guess, if you could say the issue is going away. Yeah, the firing of Don Cherry over his ignorant, bigoted remarks. It was for a week, it was a huge storm of controversy. That was huge. Obviously, it was a justifiable firing, and it all started with Don Cherry going after people who don't wear poppies, particularly immigrants. And it was, yes, he was justifiably fired. It was long overdue. He's a bigot. He's intolerant, and he shouldn't be on national television. Saying that, I wrote a letter in the Star about 10 days ago. Had a letter in the Star about 10 days ago because there were a couple of issues that came out of this. The one issue is hockey. The one issue is hockey, and why hockey has such an inflated role in Canadian society, and how hockey is so important to Canada that we allow a guy like Don Cherry to be elevated into this role and have this prominent role in Canadian television for many, many, many years. And he survived his stupid remarks, his bigoted remarks, his intolerant remarks. He has survived on Canadian television for many years. Finally, he went too far, and he was let go, justifiably, as I said. But it goes to show you the role hockey plays in Canadian society. The elevated role that hockey plays in Canadian society, that we would tolerate a guy like Don Cherry on Hockey Night in Canada. Hockey plays too big a role in Canadian society, and this whole thing, Tim Hortons and all that stuff. It's crazy. I don't like to be identified with hockey. I don't like the fact that Canada is identified with hockey. I think Canada should be identified with the good things, the positives. We're open to immigration. We're a relatively tolerant country. We're coming to terms with our elements of our dark past. We're a progressive, forward country. Hardly perfect, definitely flawed, but if you look at the world, not a bad place to live. So I'd rather be identified with the positives that Canada has to offer, and not identified with hockey. Classic was on October 21st, federal election night. We were at a local bar in Toronto, and the hockey game was on. I asked them to turn at least one or two of the TVs to the election. The bar staff said, no, hockey's too important. I said, he said, well, turn the election results on after the game. I said, well, that's crazy. You can turn a couple of TVs on and still have one TV on the hockey game. And no one was even watching the hockey game. But nope, hockey trumps all. Hockey trumps all. And that's sad and pathetic that hockey could trump a federal election. I just found that sad. That's a sad statement about what's going on in Canada. And hockey has too elevated a role in our society. Going to where all this began about the poppy. Wearing a poppy is a choice. It's like voting. Okay, you decide to vote, or you don't decide to vote. It's like wearing a poppy is a choice. You don't have to remember the sacrifices of a lot of Canadians, particularly young Canadians, in all the various wars, and have to wear a poppy. You don't have to wear a poppy to remember the sacrifices that Canadians made in all these wars. I mean, my parents came from Holland. The Canadians liberated Holland. They liberated the Netherlands. I get the sacrifices that young Canadians made. I've seen the Canadian cemetery in the Netherlands at Holden. So I understand. You don't have to wear a poppy to remember the sacrifices. And as I said in my letter, I remember a button from the early 1980s peace movement. To remember is to end all war. To remember is to end all war.
Oh boy.
And that's a good button. To remember is to end all war. So, to remember, Remembrance Day is about remembering the dark, the bad parts of our history, the dark parts of our history, the wars, the world wars, and all the other stuff that has happened, and try not to repeat it. Let's not repeat it. That's what remember is. Let's not repeat these wars. Let's We're obviously not having that much success.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
But we're having some, and that takes me to the next segment. So yeah, to remember is to end all war. I think this is a great button, and you, like I said, you don't have to wear a poppy to remember the sacrifices that many Canadians made. But that takes me, yeah. So we still have wars, raging wars all over the world. War in Yemen. There's war in the Congo. There's the Middle East is Syria. I mean, it's just yeah, obviously. But we don't have war in Europe by and large. Okay. Yes, there's a war in the Donbass in Ukraine, Russian aggression in the Ukraine, which we're trying to solve, and of course that's a whole other issue, right? But other than the war in the Balkans in the 90s, Europe has been at peace since the Second World War. And that's all because of the European project, the European Union, what they call the European experiment, the European project, or, the European Union, right? And it's been a relative success story. And I know Trump doesn't like the European Union. The Brexiteers want out and Britain wants out, but the European Union has been a success story. We've remembered the dark elements of our history, and we've vowed not to repeat them. So there hasn't been major war in Europe since the Second World War, and that's a good thing. The European Union is a success, despite all its problems. It's a success. It's a world success. It's an historical success. And I was reading this Economist magazine with Macron, the other great liberal reformer. I mean, he's a bit of a fraud. Like Trudeau, he's a fraud too.
He's after something, that's for sure.
Macron, yeah. He warns, but Europe, there are problems. But, Macron is playing two sides of the game. He's a big supporter of the European Union. He says the Euro, and I think he advocates, like a lot of people do, that Europe should take more control of its own affairs. They should. They should get more involved in world leadership, not depend on the Americans. They should be more involved in the Middle East, they should get more involved. The Europeans, they need to break away somewhat. I mean, whatever you think of NATO and all that, the Europeans need to take control. If they should have their own military command, if it still can be a NATO and all that. Eventually, I'd love to see that stuff fade away. But the Europeans need to take more control and show more leadership on the world stage. What happened when the U.S. withdrew those troops from Syria and the Kurds were left to the Kurds were getting massacred by the Turks. Where was Europe? Why didn't they step in? There's a lot of hypocrisy from European leaders, particularly Macron. And now Macron, Turkey's a whole other bag of, when Erdogan went to the White House a few weeks ago, it was disgraceful. But we'll talk about Turkey in another video. But Macron now wants to keep North Macedonia, which is a new state, out of the... he wants to keep North Macedonia out of the European Union. It was a big deal to get the Greeks and the Macedonians finally agreed on a new name for North Macedonia, the part of Macedonia that used to be part of Yugoslavia. There's a lot of Albanians that live in Macedonia, but they agreed on a name, North Macedonia. The Greeks wanted, they saw Macedonia as still part of Greece. So it was a contentious issue between Greece and Macedonia, the former Macedonia of Yugoslavia, now called North Macedonia. And North Macedonia wants to join the EU. And that's a great idea. All these countries, former countries of Yugoslavia or the Soviet Union, I'd love to see them part of the EU. And this is not a slight towards Russia, but unfortunately, Russia is a despotic country, and I like this. I want Ukraine to be part of the EU, a larger EU is better for everybody. It's better for the world. And
so,
Macron is saying, we don't. Macron, because his fear of immigrants from Southern Europe, he is saying right now he's trying to block North Macedonia's accession into the European Union, and that's racist. That's outrageous. He's playing to this anti-immigrant base in France. And I think it's not showing leadership. Macron is a bit of a fraud. But, okay, so we'll talk more about him at some other time. So let's go. All these issues are following nicely. Ukraine, the EU, Ukraine. So, obviously, the big story of the week was all this testimony in the House on impeachment. Gordon Sondland, he just broke the dam open, and then we had Fiona Hill and Yeah, it was kind of riveting testimony. He's a really Gordon Sondland is a character. He's not an intellectual like Fiona Hill or some of the others that testified. Um, uh, he got appointed to the European Union job because he gave money to the Trump inaugural. Uh, um, but it was interesting. He didn't really care. He threw everybody under the bus, and he didn't seem to care. He loves his job at the European Union, so I think that's a positive. Trump's got a guy in there who actually likes the European Union, um, and he's kind of full of himself. And he's a Trump. He's a you know he's a Trump is I don't want to say he's a good friend of Trump's, but he obviously knows him. Um, but he let I thought he said it all. He said, yeah, it was a quid pro quo. Of course, Trump wanted the Ukrainians to dig up stuff on the Bidens, go back to the 2016 election, and the server and all that, and try to relive, and try to put the blame on the Clinton, the Clinton campaign. It gets so bloody complex, it's crazy. But the big deal is he wanted dirt on the Bidens. Joe Biden being a potential, his potential competitor in the 2020 presidential election. I don't think Biden will get the Democratic nomination. I think his chances are fading, frankly. But we'll see. We'll see.
Elizabeth Warren.
But yeah, Biden could be Trump's rival in the 2020 presidential election. I don't see it happening. I think Biden's chances are fading, but we'll see. But Trump was trying to dig up stuff on him to help him get reelected next year. So, Gordon Sondland just broke the dam open. He just didn't care he's put everyone under the bus. And I thought, yeah, and it was a fun testimony because he has nothing to lose. If he gets fired from his job, no big deal. He'll go back to the U.S. He's a wealthy guy. So, Trump, to end this, yes, Trump should be impeached. Trump should be impeached. If Bill Clinton was impeached over, lying about a blowjob, basically, consensual sex act, if Bill Clinton can be impeached over a sex act, lying about a sex act, Trump should be impeached for all the things that he's done: obstruction of justice, obstruction of Congress, lying constantly, using the U.S. military to further his own personal goals. I mean, really, withholding the military aid to Ukraine, and then sending troops to Saudi Arabia. That's he says he wants to get out of the Middle East, and yet he's sending 1,800 troops to Saudi Arabia just to curry favor with the butcher, murderer, MBS. Like, really, Trump should be impeached for all the things. He's an unethical, sleazy, probably the sleaziest, most unethical president in the history of the United States. There might have been a few others, but he's right up there. And even Richard Nixon is a choir boy compared to Donald Trump. Yeah, Trump should be impeached. And all the crazy things he's done in foreign policy, the latest recognizing Israeli settlements in the West Bank, outrageous. Don't get me wrong. One thing Trump has done that I think is good is now there's honesty in Middle East policy. The U.S. doesn't care about the Palestinians. They don't care about a two-state solution. They just support Israel, and that at least Trump has brought some honesty to that. The peace process is dead. It died a long time ago. The Palestinians are not going to get a state of their own. The Arabs don't care anymore. Everybody's moved on. Now, as I said many times, it's time for the Palestinians to fight for civil rights within Israel. And I always said, call it Israel and Palestine. Call it an expanded state, Israel and Palestine. And Palestinians need to fight for civil rights within a larger state. That, I know that's unpopular with a lot of people, but yeah, the Palestinians are not getting their state, I think. And one thing is the Trump administration has made clear and he's brought some honesty to the debate. There is no peace process. There is no two-state solution. It's over. And it's been over for a long time. It was over under Obama. It's been over under Bush. It was over under Clinton. It's been over for a long time. So, but that's more on another issue. Netanyahu has his own problems. I hope his legal problems bring him down. They were saying, Clea and I were watching Fareed Zakaria today. Israel and the United States are very similar. You've got a sleazy, dirty president, Netanyahu. You've got a sleazy, dirty president, Trump. The difference is that there are now people in Israel speaking up against Netanyahu's allies in Likud Party is speaking up against him. Whereas someone said the Republican Party is part of the Trump organization. The Republican Party is lock and step with Donald Trump. They defend him. They'll continue to defend him, and there doesn't seem to be any break in that loyalty. The Republican Party has become a part of the Trump organization. It's basically a sleazy, dirty conservative party, and where that goes. But it's good to see Netanyahu's former allies in Israel, his former colleagues, speaking out against him. And we'll see where that goes. I hope Netanyahu is brought down. Lots to talk about. There's a lot going on in the world more, but we're done because now we went over that 10-minute limit. So that's it for now.
Okay.